talk about the conference?
Not yet, no.
Well, I'm gonna
And I can
mention
pull that up
conference.
right here too.
We got one person. Everybody here needs to sign up. Right now, we've got an early bird special. We're giving $100 off, and that's gonna go away soon. We're gonna be announcing that, probably go away very soon. So if you're on your phone while I'm speaking, or on your little device, you either better be taking notes or signing up for the conference, okay? Sign up now, get off your hands and sign up for the conference. Here's the thing. It's not about the money, right? If you sign up now, it's what, $195 today?
Yep, 195.
$195 if you type in an early bird. If you want to pay $295, don't type in early bird. If you pay $295, you're more than welcome to. The cool thing is, if you pay $295, your money goes to charity, okay? So that's the cool thing. This is 100%, we're not making any money off it. So I'm not taking your money to make money. We're gonna pay for our venue and pay for our expenses, and then everything else is going to the nonprofits, okay? So that's the cool thing. But the best thing about this conference, look, $200, that's some money you guys can do something else with. You can go buy a couple cases of beer and hang out and watch Netflix. Or you can come to this conference and meet amazing people, and you're gonna get a ton of value. And the people that we have on here, I mean, the first two people, Trevor McGregor and Chris Sherman, that right there is worth $200. To hear those guys speak, those two alone, to hear those guys speak and to meet them, worth it, 100%. Okay, so if you're not signing up for this thing, I mean, look, if you can't, yeah, hey, look at that guy. He's gonna be there? That's worth $300, pay the full price. But no, seriously though, if you guys can't pay the $200 because, I don't know why, but then you don't be a real estate investor. Like, you need to value your education. So, you want a phenomenal story about losing everything and,
Yeah.
and then building it all back. I mean,
Yeah.
that's gonna be so cool to listen to him talk. We've got Kevin Ortner, the CEO of Renters Warehouse. They're the biggest management company in the country. Right? So we got some cool people coming. I'm excited.
Both Todd and I have gone to quite a few conferences, and I really think that it's the next level. A lot from meetups are great. I love meetups. I'm not saying anything bad about meetups, but you're not really going to get
better not. You're running one.
Yeah, but you're not going to get that many quality speakers in one area as a conference ever to meet up. You can go to 1 million meetups in a year. You're not going to get what you'll get in 2 days here. So 10 weeks of meetup won't get you 2 days of stuff here.
Well, we're going to have networking opportunities during the conference, after the conference. So that's the best value about these conferences, and actually these meetups, is to just meet people. I don't know who said it. We're meeting like-minded people, and that's the best thing. So that's probably enough of our commercial, but you guys sign up. Let's do the PowerPoint first. So the first part of this is a PowerPoint on kind of the fundamentals of underwriting. The second part is going to be, I'm going to pick apart one of the deals, a recent deal that I just closed, and that way you can see some of the numbers. So the second part's going to be the nerdy stuff that I really like, but the first part, that's going to apply to any kind of rental property, okay? The second part is going to be more for mid-sized to larger, because I'm picking apart these numbers. I wouldn't go as in-depth with your underwriting and analysis if you're buying a duplex. Like, don't plug it into my system if you're doing that. But the fundamentals for a duplex still apply when we're talking about some of these underwriting rules and stuff. So.
What criteria do you look for when you're looking at the apartments you're potentially thinking about investing in, like a city, population and stuff, or is it?
You know what? Hold that question. Okay. If I don't answer it, ask it again. think I'm gonna answer it though. Can I not hit the arrows? I can't arrow this thing? Alright, so that's me, enough about me. Okay. Can I not get to slide 2? Jordan, how do I do this thing, man?
I don't know how to use Google Slides too well. I've learned I'm not as tech savvy as I thought I was.
Well, hang on.
We're not on this
Let me
page.
see if I can do it.
Oh, wait, drag this
Try the
over.
space bar.
You think spacebar will do it?
I'm gonna drag this over here.
Or the arrow keys, 1 and 2.
They're not, it'll switch. Just keep it from that. There we go. I know how to use PowerPoint.
There we go.
Let's go to slideshow.
Slideshow. Yeah. I thought you had me.
That was on Google Slides.
Ah, all right. There we go. Beautiful.
Nice.
All right. So prior to underwriting, I want to cover a couple things. How do we choose the market? And I'm not even talking, if you're in Minneapolis or the Twin Cities, or you're in South Minnesota, you want to be able to choose not only the market, Minneapolis or St. Paul or whatever, but you want to choose that sub-market. You want to choose, I want to narrow it down as tightly as I can, because you guys all know, if you've driven around, especially Minneapolis, St. Paul, you know it can change within a block or two, right? So we want to make sure we're picking a solid sub-market, solid market, and sub-market. If you're investing out of state, okay, we got some investors that are investing in different parts of the country. I am as well. We want to make sure the market's solid, but that's only just a part of it. We also want to make sure the exact spot where we're going is going to be solid. I look for income level over 35,000. I do that because I want to make sure my tenants can actually afford the place. Okay, so if my median income is under 35, me personally, that's an area I'm going to avoid. You don't have to, it's just my criteria. I look for population growth within a mile, and I think that's key. We can have population growth in the city, but if the population growth isn't in the neighborhood I'm looking in, you're gonna have issues continuing to rent in that area, especially if we got a declining population. I don't think at the Twin Cities we really have too much of that going on right now, but in some of the other cities that I'm investing in, there is that happens. So like Cincinnati, for instance, has some neighborhoods where the population is declining. Well, I don't want to invest there if that's happening, because what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15 years, it's going to be challenging for me to sell my property and potentially continue to rent my property and have those rents grow. Affordability, I think that's super key, especially right now in this market. Rents are continuing to go up, and they have been going up for years. So can my tenants actually afford to live in the neighborhood I want to invest in? And how do you figure that out? Well, I like markets where my tenants are paying 25% or less to rent from their income, okay? The standard is, you hear is a third. I like to see 25% or less. Is there job growth within 5 miles? Okay, if there's no job growth happening close by, why are those tenants going to stay there, right? So is it easy for tenants to get there? And then you also have to look at, too, your demographic of who's living there, right? If you've got, what's your workforce in that area? If your workforce is mostly taking buses or public transportation, well, you probably want that job growth and good jobs even closer, right? Because they don't want to be on the bus for 3 hours just to get to work. Solid schools. Is there government support in the area? Like, Are the roads all falling apart? Is all the boulevards nasty? Or is the government actually doing something? Are there incentives to bring in businesses or nearby? And then what's the neighboring housing stock like? Is it in good condition or poor condition?
Todd? All right, by the way, are you taking questions during the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Go ahead.
so, this looks like you might be answering my question, but, so job growth, population growth, income growth, what, census.gov or city data? I mean, where are you looking for those?
Yeah, so census.gov is a great place to find it. A little hard to navigate. Okay, it takes a while for you to navigate, but once you figure out how to navigate it, it's a great resource. Like city data, neighborhood scout, local market monitor, they kind of break things down a lot easier to navigate their data. They're taking it from the census and putting it together. Trulia has got some good data, but it's mostly I use it mostly for kind of your heat maps for your crime. The local police department sites a lot of times will show you where the crime is happening as well, especially as you narrow it down. Now, I wouldn't go to the local police department if I'm just looking at the city as a whole. Then I'd look at Trulia, right? Because that kind of gives me the heat maps. But then when I find a property, then I go into the local police department and try to find out. And if they don't have it on their website, you can call them and you can get that information. Now, if you ask them if the neighborhood is safe, usually they don't say yes or no. But if you get the data from them, it's all public data. They should release it to you. City websites oftentimes have really good information. Most cities have a comprehensive plan. What are they trying to do, and what areas are they trying to affect, and how? So you can look at those too. What's the city actually doing? Especially on the surface where you're going, okay, what neighborhoods do I want to go to? Because look, we all want to invest in the next, Northeast Minneapolis. We want to all invest in that market that is going from, when I bought in Northeast Minneapolis back in 2009, my rents were at $750. Now they're at $1,400. I mean, that's in Northeast Minneapolis. It's really, really improved in that area. And even just a few years before that, the rents were even lower. So we all want to invest in those markets that are emerging. And if we can look at the city website and a lot of these other things, we can really start to see, okay, what are the trends? Where are things going? Brokerage sites are great. Marcus and Millichap, Colliers, Cushman Wakefield, JLL, CBRE kind of. They don't have as much research. Marcus and Millichap, I think, provide some of the best research. So go to those websites. They've got great research. Now, if you're in a smaller market, like you guys said Southeast Minnesota, you're not going to find anything, right? Not on Marcus and Millichap or anything like that. You're going to have to dig into some of these other things. You're going to have to talk with your local brokers who might have some of that stuff. But in Little Rock and what other market? Kansas City, you can find those reports. All right, so we picked our market. Now, what are we going to do to figure out if this property is important, or figure out what is important? I think everybody can agree today's market is challenging. Challenging to find good cash flowing properties that you feel comfortable with buying, that you can keep for the long term and not lose your shirt when the market or recession does happen, right? It's challenging out there. So we want to do prudent things, right? We want to make sure we're not going to lose our assets after we buy them, right? So what do I look for? I look for cash flow. Can this thing cash flow day one or very quickly after day one, okay? I've bought properties that don't cash flow day one, and they're difficult. They're very difficult. And can you make them work? Absolutely, but we want to get to that cash flow point as quickly as we possibly can. Do we have ample cash reserves? This is huge. Do you have ample cash reserves? I'll talk when we get into our numbers, what I think that means. But when we buy a property, especially if you're syndicating, we try not to run out of money, right? We want to make sure we're prudent with our money. We want to make sure we have ample amount of money. So I hear people going, okay, I've got $1 million and I only need a 20% down payment on a building. You know, what size building can I buy? Think about it. What size building could I buy? If I got $1 million and I can buy it with a 20% down payment. Okay? But is that accurate? No, because I got closing costs, right? I have stuff that I'm also gonna have to pay for up front. Like most lenders will make you pay the first month of the mortgage up front. Most lenders will make you escrow taxes and insurance up front, okay? So you've got to think about those things. And then the last thing is I need to have a reserve account. And what should that be? In my opinion, if it's a fairly stable building, you should be looking at about 6 months of principal and interest payments. Okay. The next thing is solid debt financing. Do you have financing that is going to be good, or are you paying crazy hard money rates, crazy rates that are fluctuating? What do you have for financing? Conservative renovation budget. Again, we don't want to run out of money. Conservative expense assumptions. And I see a lot of people making these crazy expense assumptions, and I'll go through what I think conservative means, but I see it all the time where people are making these expense assumptions I think are way, way off. And again, we'll go through that. As we're analyzing a deal, trust but verify, okay? Be skeptical of the seller's numbers. Sellers like to lie. Who knew? Okay? Brokers sometimes stretch the truth a little bit. Am I right?
Yeah.
Look, brokers aren't necessarily lying to you, but they might be optimistic. Okay? That's probably the best word for it. They're being optimistic. And maybe you can get to their expectations and possibly exceed their expectations. But they are being optimistic. Most brokers aren't super conservative by nature. That's just how it is. Okay? So don't trust the broker's rent increase assumptions, their vacancy rate assumptions, all their assumptions in their pro forma. Don't trust it. You can look at it, but verify it yourself. And again, they're not trying to screw you over, right? They're trying to maximize the value of that property. They want to sell that property for the most amount of money possible. A, they get a good commission, and B, they look really dang good for their sellers, and they get more properties sold. That's their job. And then one thing I notice a lot is property taxes. They do go up after you buy a property typically, especially in today's market where you're buying the property for more than what the other guy bought it for. So they do go up. Research what that means. When you buy a property, most brokers in their pro forma don't show those taxes increasing, or at least increasing that much. Okay? So make sure you, I mean, a lot of times today, they get close to doubling even. So be aware. I sold a property in South Minneapolis, kind of by the US Bank Stadium, and I bought it for like $200,000. No, yeah, $100,000. Sorry, $100,000. I sold it for like $600,000. Now we did improvements and stuff, and that was during the recession. But what do you think happened to those taxes? Right, they went way up, and I guarantee they're going to go way up. I don't know if this buyer underwrote based on the new taxes or not, but I do know if he looked at the taxes and said, oh, these taxes are only at $5,000 a year, that's great, put those in his assumptions, he's gonna be way off because they're going way up. All right, if you're buying a value add, assume your marketing budget will be larger than the salaries, okay? Assume your payroll will be larger. Assume that you'll pay more for contract services. Why? Why do you think if you're buying a value add, those things would go up? Anybody? Why would those go up? Nobody wants to take a stab?
Quality of employee change.
Right. If you're buying a value add, what did the person you're buying it from not do?
Pay enough.
They probably didn't pay enough. They probably didn't have the best marketing plan in place. They possibly didn't have the best employees in place, or didn't have enough employees in place. They probably didn't take care of the property quite as good as what you should. So plan on paying more for that stuff. If you want to get better tenants to pay more money for your property, you probably want to have a bigger marketing budget than the previous person did, right? So we got to get tenants in this place. We want good quality people to be working for us, so we need to pay a little bit more. All right, so things to consider. Reserve account. I already talked about your opening up reserve account, but you guys, if you're buying a duplex or a single family or an apartment complex, need to be every single month putting away money for reserves. What do reserves cover? My big capital expense items: a roof, a water heater, a furnace, really anything big, right?
Parking lot.
Parking lot. Oh, that's a huge expense. That sucks. A lot of these expenses, guess what? They add almost no value to your property, right? You do a brand new roof, nobody cares. Well, they care, but they're not gonna pay a ton more money for a brand new roof. But you have to do it. If you don't do it, your tenants are getting wet and they're not happy, right? So those capital expenditures, you need to be continuing to save money every single month. Now, this rule of thumb, 250 to 300 per unit per year, is for bigger properties. If you've got a smaller property, you're going to want to budget a lot more than that. Okay? I can't give you an exact rule, but I think for a single family, when I was buying a lot of single families, I was budgeting $200 a month for a single family, $200 a month every single month. I don't know what you do for smaller properties.
I think for at least for the repair and maintenance, it matters quite a bit what kind of work you did up front. So I think $400 to $600 a unit a year is great if you've done
Yes.
the required renovations up front.
And
but
same
if
thing
you're
with the
not
reserve
doing that,
account,
you
too.
don't have the reserve account or the proper budget to do that right up front, that's a lot higher.
Yeah, absolutely. So these that's full disclosure. I mean, like Jordan just said, I mean, if you're buying a property and it's a 1960s building, your repair and maintenance is going to be going up, especially if you haven't done the work to renovate it and to have new plumbing and new electrical and new HVAC and some of the other things that are big capital expenditures. That should be going up quite a bit. Okay? But in general, if you have a property in good condition with newer finishes, they don't have to be brand new, but not newer finishes, you're looking at around $400 to $600 a year per unit on an apartment building in the Twin Cities area. If you're in a cheaper market like a Little Rock, you're probably paying a little bit less than that. Okay? Depending on your property too. If you've got a B-class property in Little Rock, it's going to be a little cheaper than a C-class property in Little Rock. Okay? Unit turnover expense, that's one thing a lot of people miss. Guess what? Tenants move every once in a while. Okay? So you do have to turn that unit over. You have to paint it, you have to clean the carpets, all that kind of stuff. So I always budget $300 to $500 per year per unit, and that's going to vary, not depending necessarily on my property, but it's going to depend on the square footage size of my units, and it's also going to depend on the demographic of my tenants. If I've got tenants that turn over quickly, like college students, younger students in younger people, in one bedroom or studios, they turn over a lot, right? I'm going to budget a lot higher. If I've got maybe families, 2 and 3 bedroom places in an area where I think they're going to stay quite a bit, My turnover ratio is not gonna be as much, so I can budget a lot less. Who wants to buy bigger properties, 100 unit plus? Okay, so if you're buying 100 unit plus buildings, really 75 plus unit building, you're gonna have 2 employees for every 75 to 100 units. So you're gonna have to pay for their salary, you're gonna have to pay for their benefits, workers' comp, all that kind of stuff. If you're buying smaller properties, your management fee is gonna be higher. So a management fee on like a 100 unit building is gonna be 3%, 4%, somewhere around there, maybe up to 5%. But your management fee on a smaller building, let's say a 25 unit building, is gonna be more closer to probably 10%. And then you've got other fees that a lot of people forget about, quite frankly. A lot of people forget that you have to pay somebody to lease the building. You have to pay more for maintenance because you don't have a maintenance person on site. Okay, so a lot of these rules of thumb, this 400 to 600 for maintenance is if you have somebody on site. If you don't, I would probably double that number. Okay, so you got to think about, okay, what size building do I have? And I could go through all this stuff, but there's so much to go through on every unit size. The other important thing is know your debt. People get excited and they go, okay, I got this building, I can get 80% loan to value, and they do their underwriting and they get the offer accepted, and then they bring it to their lender, and their lender goes, yeah, we can get you a loan on this, you have to put 35% down. Like, oh crap, that doesn't work anymore. Like, my cash on cash is racked, I don't have that much money, whatever it is, and now the deal doesn't work. So make sure you know what kind of debt service coverage ratio is, okay? Who knows what debt service coverage ratio is? Who doesn't know what debt service coverage ratio is? Anybody doesn't? Okay, so it's your income that you're making, your net operating income. So your net operating income is your NOI. That's all your income minus all your expenses. Okay, that's your NOI. Your debt service is going to be your NOI, how much money you're making, divided by your mortgage payment. So your annual revenue, NOI, divided by your annual mortgage payment is going to get you your debt service. You want your revenue to be 1.25 times greater than your debt payment. That make sense? I'll show you an example too. The other thing is the lender's going to add more expenses if needed. So just because the seller gives you, or the broker gives you a beautiful looking pro forma, doesn't mean that the lender is not going to sniff that out and actually add more expenses. If they don't think that's accurate, they're going to add expenses. They're going to make sure it looks good for them. Right now, typically we're seeing debt in the Twin Cities and most parts of the country anywhere between, even down to into the 60s, 60 to 75% loan to cost, which is either loan to purchase. Not seeing a lot of 80%. The reason why is because it doesn't hit the 1.25. Okay. And then you've got different kinds of loans, and that's like a whole nother topic, but if you want to write these down, you've got bridge loans, you've got agency debt, which is like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, CMBS. You've got your local banks. Okay, all debts are going to be different, and they will affect your purchase, so you have to know, like, what kind of debt am I putting on it? If you guys don't know about debt, the best thing to do, call some brokers, some mortgage brokers. Okay, they'll teach you everything. Right? Call them. Here's the thing: is call professionals. I think some of the best people to be calling and talking to, as somebody trying to get started, are your mortgage brokers and your property managers. Okay, they'll teach you a lot of things. Take them out to lunch, meet them at their office, whatever you need to do, but just have a conversation with them. They want your business. They will teach you a lot of things. Have a conversation with them and ask them questions. Ask them questions about the market, ask them questions about the underwriting, type of loans, all that kind of stuff. You can even show them your underwriting on a property that you're looking to buy, okay? You can even show them that and say, hey, here's the property I'm looking to buy, take a look at this, and they will poke holes in it. Ask them to poke holes in it, okay? Same thing with property managers. You want to learn what real expenses are and what actual income could be in areas. Talk with your property manager, show them your underwriting and say, what do you think about this? How accurate is this? They will poke holes in your underwriting and say, well, look, yeah, you put $300 a month, or $300 a unit for your maintenance, but most of the properties in the area are running at $600. This thing's got a pool, whatever, it's gonna be at $600 to $800, okay? They'll poke holes in it, so those are great people to talk to.
Could you explain the difference between the loan to cost versus loan to value, because it's gonna change depending on the asset?
Well, loan to cost is what your typical lender is gonna be going on. So your agency debt is gonna go on loan to cost, your typical traditional lending is gonna go on loan to cost, which is your loan to purchase price, right? If you're getting like a bridge loan or a local bank that's gonna give you construction financing, sometimes what they're gonna do is they're gonna give you a construction loan and they're gonna get the future value. So they're gonna go loan to value, but they're also gonna lend on what your actual all-in cost is too. So they're gonna lend on the lesser of the two. So if, let's say you buy a property for $1 million and you stick another $500,000 into it, 1.5 million, they'll lend on, 80% or 75 or whatever they want to lend on of the 1.5, as long as it appraises for 1.5 or higher. If it appraises for 1.3, you'll only lend on the 1.3, right? Is that what you're asking? All right, I'm going to go into numbers real quick. A couple final thoughts. I see a lot of people underwriting with value add, and they're underwriting that their income's going to increase drastically in year one. Income typically does not increase in year one, or not very much at least. So if you're increasing your NOI, I should say, if you're increasing your NOI drastically in year one, you probably want to relook at that and rethink about it. Because it takes a while for us to renovate units, get new tenants in and charge more for rent, and actually start receiving that income coming in. Same thing with reducing expenses. It takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight. So we got to think about how fast can we actually do this? What's realistic? On a 200 unit building, it's going to take me 2 to 3 years to actually do that whole process and to stabilize the building and get it all completely done. Okay? It's not going to happen overnight. I've had a lot of fun conversations about cap rates lately. Cap rates today are compressed, right? The market's hot, cap rates are compressed. If you don't know that now. Look at historical numbers. This is my biggest fear of what people are doing right now. Is you're not looking at historical numbers. Look at historical numbers when you're looking at reversion cap rate. What a reversion cap rate means is that when I'm doing my underwriting, and I'll show you that in just a second, when I'm doing my underwriting, I'm going to say I'm going to sell this property in 5 years from now, or 10 years, or whatever it is. And when I sell it, I'm going to be selling it based on a X cap rate, 5 cap, 6 cap, whatever that might be. I want to try to accurately guess, because it's a guess, where that cap rate is going to be. Well, if I base it on historicals, I'm going to be probably a lot more accurate than if I base it on today's market. Does that make sense? Like, I want to base it on historicals. Now, there's some times where you go, well, I don't want to base it on historicals because I know this market historically was a C-class neighborhood and now it's trending to be A-class. Well, that's a big difference. Okay, then we want to look at like the A- stuff, the B, the A A stuff, that B plus, and see where those cap rates have been. Okay, we're not gonna no longer look at the C class properties if it used to be in that area. But what I see a lot of people doing, and this is, in my opinion, it gonna affect people in a negative way. And I just had a conversation today, and I just had a conversation yesterday on this exact topic, is I'm gonna go buy a property in, let's say East St. Paul, okay? And I'm buying this property in East St. Paul, it's a value add, and I know it's a value add, I'm gonna create all this value, and I buy this property in East St. Paul for a 6 cap, or maybe a 5.5 cap. And what I do is I say, well, I'm being conservative, so I tell my investors, I'm being conservative. We're buying this at a 5.5 cap today, and we're gonna sell this 5 years down the road for a 6 cap. Well, when in reality, the actual cap rate in East St. Paul is today at a 6 cap already, or maybe even a 6.25 cap. So am I being conservative? No, because I'm already upside down. And I'm seeing this a lot from people. So actually use the real cap rate. Just because you're overpaying for a property because it's got huge value add potential, in my opinion, that's okay. Not as long as you don't crazy overpay. But you can pay a compressed cap rate, but you've got to understand you have to bring that value over the current market. Otherwise the deal doesn't work, like it's not worth doing. But I see this happening a lot. And I think people are gonna get hurt by it, especially if the market flips. That'd be a great topic we can talk about. Should be a panel up here, and we can talk about what we think the market's gonna be doing. That'd be fun, you guys agree?
Everybody has a crystal ball in front of them.
We're gonna do that at the conference, by the way, so another reason to go to the conference, okay? Decide on your strategy prior to underwriting, that's really important, because look, if I wanna take and buy a property, I'm gonna hold it for my lifetime, I'm just gonna hold this, and maybe I'm gonna even pass it down to my kids, that's a totally different strategy than if I'm gonna buy this thing, and in 3 to 5 years, I'm gonna sell it, 1031 it, and buy another building. Totally different strategy. Or, I mean, maybe I'm gonna bring in a bunch of investors, and I'm gonna value add it, and I'm gonna sell it. Totally different strategy even yet. So you gotta figure out, what's your strategy? If you've got investors that all they're looking for is cash on cash return, they want 8% cash on cash return every year, and they're fine with a 10-year hold, and they're fine just keeping their money and getting that 8%, and it eventually grows to 10%, and they'll just hold it. They're good with that. But that's a different strategy than buying, value adding, selling, okay? So make sure you have your strategy prior to underwriting. That's gonna be really big. All right, Jordan, we got, find me the underwriting. So now, I'm gonna go through a deal we just fairly recently closed on. And I'm gonna go through some of the numbers. This is the nerdy stuff, so bear with me. Hopefully you guys can see these numbers. If you can't, I think we can move some chairs a little closer. You can get in. I'll try to zoom in, but if you can't, just move up, bring some chairs to the side. Oh, that one. Yep. I'll share this Excel with anybody. It's not super sophisticated. And I don't charge for it, so I'll just share it with you. Oh, I was gonna blank out the names. It's on mine. There you go.
There you go.
I can't see it on here. Is there a way to get it on here?
No, the mouse is up on the screen.
Okay, so I can play with it like that.
Yep.
You can also press F11, function F11 to full screen Excel. Either F11 or function F11. If not,
Function F11. I don't know what you mean. You can come here and do it for me.
We'll see if it works, but it's not yet.
There's like an FN button.
Dude, I don't know anything about this stuff. I need a tech person when I do these things.
Me too. Have you seen the live streams I've been doing recently?
No.
A minute or
Yeah.
two in, we're getting people up on the camera. I think I need a layout to send out people before I do a live stream to tell them how to live stream.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a minute or two to figure out what you're doing. Probably more than a minute or two.
I guess.
Usually about 5.
Doesn't want to do it?
Yeah, oh well.
If you do Windows key P, then you can duplicate them so you can look at the screen. You don't have to worry about looking up there.
Yeah, it'd be great to be able to see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I got that up
Windows
right
key
now. Well, that's
You
good
see
too, I
it
guess.
there.
Yeah, click on duplicate.
Yeah, just a, yeah.
Can we get that out of there though?
Yeah.
Just click it. All right, so this deal, 224 units. There's my purchase. Here's my reserve account. Notice how my reserve account, can you guys see that from way back there? Should I just try to zoom? I can zoom in a little bit.
Control plus will do that.
Dude, that's way too advanced for me. Now I can't figure out how to, there we go. All right. Is that better?
Yep.
Or more? That's good? Okay. You see my reserve account? I've got a nice size reserve account, right? I got a 500, but my reserve account is 6% of the purchase price, okay? This one's, and I did a larger reserve account on this one because I've got a lot of repairs that I'm doing, okay? And it's not a completely stable, it's a stabilized building with occupancy, but we're raising rents and doing a lot of work to it, okay? So I wanted a larger reserve account. You can see my repair budget in there, and my repair budget is very healthy, okay? So what I try to do is take what I think we're gonna be spending, and then I make sure we got at least an additional about 20%, okay? The more we go with our budget, the more I'm gonna add on to it. I might add 25 or 30% if we've got a really interior-wise or exterior-wise, if we're really digging into stuff. You know, if we're opening up walls, if we've got a lot of plumbing stuff going on, electrical, HVAC, I'm gonna add even more to that, okay? I might add 30+% to my budget, okay? If we've got just cosmetics, a lot of light stuff, you might be okay with, 10%, 5 to 10%. Appraisals and fees, I've got 3.5% of my total loan in there. Okay, and the reason I got 3.5%, it's not gonna cost you 3.5% just for your appraisals and fees, but you also have to pay those escrows. Like I said, you have to pay for your taxes a lot of times up front, or put it in an escrow account. You have to pay for your insurance up front. Oftentimes you have to pay for your first month of mortgage right up front at closing. That adds up really quick. And this is for bigger properties. Smaller properties, totally different. And local banks too are totally different, by the way. If you're going with the local bank, your appraisals and fees and closing costs, you can cut that at least in half, if not more. Okay. These are great. This is great to send your underwriting prior to really getting deep into the deal to your lender to see what these, or at least get a quote to see if how accurate you are. This is for a syndication, so I have a sponsor fee and a loan guarantor fee based on the purchase price. So if you're not doing syndication, you probably won't have any fees like that because you're not going to pay yourself. So I put my total cash outlay. This was a construction loan, so I got my first loan, I got my construction loan. Okay, so my total loan, and this is my total cash out of pocket that I'm going to have to get put out. And this changed slightly. This is not my final version, but close enough. Over on this column, I wanna know how much I'm purchasing it per unit, so I can match it up to the market. What's the market actually selling for? Am I overpaying for this property or not? I wanna know my total purchase price. I wanna know year built, neighborhood, how long my renovation's gonna be, how long I'm holding it for, what today's market cap rate is, okay, and what the exit cap rate is. Here's what most people are doing. Today's market cap is 6.5%, that's what I talked to you about earlier. We might be buying this at a 6 cap because we're buying a distressed, it's not distressed, but we're maybe overpaying a little bit for it. But a lot of people go 6.5%, I'm gonna just add a little bit to that. And I'm gonna exit at a 7%. Well, I looked at historicals and I said, look, this neighborhood historically is selling closer to that 8 cap. That's what I'm gonna base my exit on. I wanna be conservative because guess what? If I sell this thing at a 7 cap, what do you think my investors are gonna do? They're gonna be pretty happy?
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah, they're gonna be super happy, okay? The lower my cap rate, the higher my sale price. But if I sell this at an 8.5 cap, are my investors gonna be pissed off? Probably not. You know, they're not gonna be jumping up and down, but they're not gonna be pissed off. Even if I sell it at a 9 cap, they're not gonna be pissed off. But if I had underwrote this at a 7 and I sell it at a 9, now we're talking, okay, like why were you so far off? Okay, what's my vacancy rate? Again, today, vacancy rate in this area is like around 5%, okay? But historically, we're closer to about 7%. I was a little more even conservative than that and put it at 8%. I want to know my rent growth assumptions. Okay, whoops. All right. So those are my rent growth. I'm only increasing my rent by between 1% to 2% a year. Here's my interest rate, here's my loan. Okay. And I am going to now scroll over here. All right. So this is what I like to do, is I like to figure out what I've got for my unit mix. Okay, so I got 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, large and smalls, and I don't even know what HC is, sorry. 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 2 bath. How many units do we have? What's our square footage?
High ceilings, maybe?
Price per square foot?
Handicap, 88 units.
Or handicap?
Yeah.
I think it is actually. I should know this because it's my property. And so what's the current rent and then what can we achieve in the future? And this is what we're trying to figure out, what can we achieve? How do I find that out? You guys can write down these resources if you don't know them. Rentometer is a great resource, okay? Craigslist is a great resource. It takes a little bit more research on your end because it doesn't just spit out a number for you. Secret shopping, neighboring properties, is a great resource. Apartments.com, another good resource. CoStar, which you have to pay for, but the broker may have a CoStar account and will give you a CoStar report on the neighborhood. Another great resource. CoStar. Reese, so they either have a CoStar or Reese. Like here, I went to the property, I already did my apartments.com, did my rentometer, did my Craigslist, did my CoStar, got an idea of what I could get for rent. Then I went and secret shopped the properties nearby to see what kind of level of finishes they're having, to what kind of rents they're achieving. This property was great because I secret shopped a property that touches our property and they're getting rents way higher than my projections. So I was excited, right? That's always a good thing. Now we can't quite probably make our property quite as nice as that because they've got a great layout and they've got great green space and amenity space, but we'll get close. And their rents are another like $75 higher than our rents. Okay, so that gives me my idea of where I can go in the future and where I'm at today. Okay. All right. Oh, I didn't go quite that far. All right. Is this good stuff for you guys?
Yeah.
You guys like this? All right. So I got my income, I got my rental income, I got my current income. Okay. Then I'm gonna look at my yearly income, my year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you could continue to go on if you wanna go on, right? You go to basically you think you're gonna sell, or maybe even a little bit beyond that. Now, my year 1 is not what I'm actually gonna achieve, but it's what I could achieve. That's what I put there, okay? So this number is a formula based on S10, which is that chart that I just got done showing you. So that's based on that. But if we go down here to the next column, come on, stop doing that. If we go down here to this next column, you can see I took off 15% of what I can actually achieve. That's my loss of rent. That means I'm not going to be able to charge my tenants day 1 of taking over that property the new increased rent. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so I'm trying to kind of get an estimate of where can I be, right? Vacancy loss, where are we going to be with our vacancy? You can see we have 80,000 here, and I'm going way over on my vacancy now because I know as doing value add, I'm going to lose some tenants. The cool thing about this property so far is we've actually gained tenants, but that's so far. We'll see if we can keep that trend up. Concessions, I'm going to give some discounts, right? Because I want people to move in, so I'm going to give some discounts. And then the next thing is bad debt. We always have some bad debt. What does bad debt mean? Tenants sometimes don't pay the rent. I know, shocking. Sometimes tenants don't pay their rent, and we have to kick them out, unfortunately. Or maybe you just let them live there for free. I don't know. It's up to you. I got some laundry income and other income. Other income might be RUBS. RUBS is ratio utility billing. I'm billing for some of the utilities. So I'm going to give them some billing for the water and sewer maybe. I'm going to, other income could be if I've got different amenities that they pay for that I'm collecting, any kind of income. Okay. And then my gross income, of course. And you can see I've got some growth from year 1 to year 2, but it's not crazy amount. Okay? Sorry, from year 0, where we start, to year 2, to year 1, end of year 1. And the reason I have probably that much growth is because we've got trends already that are showing that if I looked at the T3, that this income actually should be quite a bit higher. The T3 means my trailing 3 months. So if I look at the owner's statement and I say, okay, the last 3 months, where would their income be? Their income was quite a bit higher than this 1.62. It was more like 1.7, almost 1.75. Okay, so I know we're already pretty close. Okay, you can see as we grow, we only increased 1%, but now you can look at and see, okay, we're now taking off a lot less for loss of rents. We're getting closer. Year 3, we're getting even closer. Year 4, we're really close. And year 5, why aren't we there? Year 4 and year 5, well, we're never going to always get 100% of the rents. Tenants have leases. You're never going to be able to increase all tenants at the same time. So you're always going to have some sort of loss of rents. It's just reality. Okay? Our vacancy loss, okay, we continue to improve that. Our concessions, we're always continuing to offer concessions to get tenants in, and we always have some tenants that don't pay rent, unfortunately. Okay? All right, so let's look at some expenses. My property taxes. The cool thing about this city is that your property taxes don't skyrocket. So that's great.
This is Memphis, correct?
Yeah. Can you? Okay, give me a little bit of water. Sure, thank you. So I didn't increase that, I actually increased it just based on the market. Insurance, we're paying substantially more insurance than they were paying. I don't know how they're getting by so cheap, but that's based on our insurance quotes that we got. It's so easy to underwrite because you talk with your insurance broker and you get the number from your insurance broker. Easy to underwrite. Okay? Typically what I see, and you can write this down, in Minnesota we're looking at between about $275 to $325 per unit for insurance. Might be a little higher, might be a little less, depending on you, or your property, but it's right around there. But eventually, you know, as you get closer, you want to get that quote from your insurance broker. One thing I'll say about insurance, don't be cheap. Okay? Get decent insurance. You don't have to get the Cadillac, but get good insurance. Get a carrier that is going to take care of you. Make sure that the carrier is going to take care of you. I've had insurance claims. It just happens. I bought a building and 14 days later, a car crashed into it. Okay? Had to have an insurance claim. That insurance company, I would say, was not that great. They were okay, but they weren't that great. It took a long time for us to get our money out of them. Get good insurance. I would suggest that. Stuff happens. I had stuff. I had a building in North Minneapolis, when the tornado hit years ago. I had fantastic insurance. They paid for, this is recording, isn't it?
Yeah.
They paid for a lot of stuff, let's just say. Okay, it was great. They took care of me. Okay, I had the same insurance carrier. I had a building that was on a T, and a car, drunk driver came up, ran into my retaining wall, knocked over my retaining wall, ran through the stairs, knocked down the railing, chewed up the stairs, ran into a tree, started on fire, crazy, okay? And the guy didn't get hurt. Amazing. He had a passenger with him too. They just destroyed their vehicle. But guess what? Retaining walls, that wasn't covered into my insurance. But the insurance company still took care of me, and they found a way to take care of me because they're a good insurance company. Okay? They were able to then, because the stairs were attached to the building, give me a claim on my stairs. Okay? Even though they knew that I wasn't probably going to replace my stairs because they were just a little dinged up. They were concrete stairs. Okay? They didn't need to get replaced, but they knew that the retaining wall was knocked over, I was going to need to replace that. So they took care of it. Utilities are pretty easy. Utilities, taxes, insurance are really easy to figure out, right? Because you can just typically take property taxes, you can typically figure out the value of the property as you're purchasing it, and you can figure out how the county assesses. Some counties, I buy in Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington, Kentucky takes the purchase price that you just purchased the building for, and they multiply it by 1.2659%. Okay, whatever it is. Really super easy, right? Other cities and counties, a little bit different. So you got to figure out what they do and how they're going to assess your building. But that's pretty easy to figure out. Insurance is easy because you can just call your broker. Utilities are easy because you can get statements for utilities. What I always do is take the seller's number, as long as there wasn't anything funky going on, okay, and multiply it by at least 1.2%. In this case, we went up a little higher than that because they had 11% vacancy, and so as we add new tenants, our bills are going to go up a little bit. Contract services, this one, you can see I increased quite a bit. Okay, and we're probably not going to pay nearly that amount, but we want to have nice, clean landscaping. Okay, I want to have my buildings getting taken care of. Guess what? Every area in the country that's far south, they got something called termites. Okay, maybe not every, but a lot of areas. They got a thing called termites. Okay, they got a lot more bugs than we do in Minnesota. Okay, we're pretty lucky here. We don't have too many bugs to deal with. So you want to have a good exterminator, right, that comes with the property on a routine, maintenance checks and actually treating for bugs. Here you do it as well, but you just don't need to do as much. We don't need to do termite control here. Okay, we probably have mice and that's your main thing. You have bed bugs and stuff like that, but those are when they count. General admin, we're always going to have. General admin covers things like office supplies, covers it's all your like overhead costs to the building. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see, maintenance and repairs. Let's see, advertising. Okay. I want to make sure I spend some money on advertising. Okay, they were actually spending a lot of money on advertising, so I didn't have to increase it very much. And the reason why is because these guys bought this building completely distressed, and so they were spending a ton of money already on advertising to try to get new tenants and to try to get the occupancy up. You can see I got the first 2 years, I got a good advertising budget, $50,000, and then I lower that down a little bit because I know once we stabilize it, we might not need to spend quite as much. Payroll on site, this is what I talked about. We're going to have employees on the building, so I want to make sure that I budget for my employees to be there. I budgeted $260,000. Repair and maintenance. Okay. Unit turns. Management fee. 3.5%. This management company is charging us actually 3%, so we should be good there. Last thing I did is I got reserves. I got a Mac, so I'm not used to this like right-click thing. So I got my reserves at $250 per unit per month, or per unit per year. Okay. Last thing is I got my cash flow after reserves. And that gives me all my inputs. So that gives me my cash on cash return. You can see it increases. The capitalization rate. See that increases. You can see my value when I sell. Okay, that's value in 5 years. That's based on that 8% cap. And it's based on my NOI after 5 years. See, I got my mortgage payment, because I'm doing a construction loan, I had to get a little creative in here and kind of assume where my draws were going to be. You can see my mortgage and the rate that it goes up. Okay. I've got a sponsor fee. I charge a sponsor fee on my syndications of anywhere between 1.5% and 2%, okay, depending on the size of the deal. We're typically right around that $30,000 to $40,000 range. So I got my cash flow, and then I got my ROI to my investors. So that's what my investors are getting paid. The first year, you can see they're not getting paid that much. You're getting paid about 5%, but then it continues to increase as we continue to improve the product. And you might go, why is it going down? That's because my mortgage is changing. Okay? Because I got an interest-only mortgage here, and now here I've got my principal and interest. Okay? The next thing I do, okay, here's if a property is sold in 5 years. I got some profit happening, right? I paid down my mortgage, so I only had 2 years to pay down my mortgage because I did interest only for the first 3, but the next 2 years I paid down the mortgage. Okay, I built some equity between my purchase price and my sale price. I built some equity. I got some cash flow for 5 years. Okay, so that's my total profit. And then I can break down my investor profit, what they're making, their return on investment. That's a simplified return on investment. They're doubling their money basically in about 5 years. That's the goal. It's not a guarantee. And then if you guys know what IRR means, that's their IRR. Anybody know what IRR means?
Internal rate of return.
Internal rate of return. An internal rate of return is basically taking into account the time value of money. Meaning, in this case, I can't reinvest that money, right? You guys give me 100K. I'm not giving you a return back and then you're reinvesting that back into the property. So we're not always turning that money over. So we have some kind of loss of use of money. Now, could you invest those profits into something else? Sure. But you can't invest it in my deal. Okay? So we've got some loss of money. So that's why your average ROI is typically less than your IRR, because we're not giving the money back right away. A lot of the lion's share of the money is going back in year 5 when we actually sell the building.
Are those cap rates higher up there, tax adjusted, in the green line?
Yep. Are they tax adjusted?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got all your it's your based on your NOI.
Okay.
Yep. What else did I do? I got my expenses. So you saw my income is going up by 1% between year 1 and year 2, and then it's going up by 2% thereafter. I've got my expenses going up by 2% every single year, no matter what. Okay. And sometimes actually even more. The only thing I think I did less was my marketing budget was dropping after we got our property more stable. Do we want to, I guess the other thing would be my management fee goes up based on my income. So my income might go up even more, but. You guys got questions on this chart? Now, if you're buying a duplex, don't go through this whole exercise, right? If you're buying a duplex, figure out, I would be looking at 2 things, or even like a 5-unit building. I'd be looking at a couple things. I'd be looking at what's my cash flow, okay, my overall cash flow. Does it feel good? Like, am I getting enough cash flow? When I take into all my expenses, that's where people get mixed up. I think a lot of people miss their expenses. They're not considering some of the kind of up in the air expenses like their maintenance, their unit turns, and their reserves. Those are big things that a lot of people miss or underestimate. Again, overestimate that stuff. So can I make, on a duplex, can I make, let's call it $300 a month? And what's my cash on cash return? Okay, you want to make some money, right? If you're making 4%, just invest it in the stock market, or give me your money, and I'll beat 4%, or try to beat 4%. Pretty sure I can. Okay, but if you're making 15%, okay, now we're talking like that's pretty dang good. Let's do that. So you got to look at what am I really making, and then compare it to other investments. In my opinion, when you're doing like a duplex, a 4-plex, or 5, really anything, quite frankly, is what's my return based on other investments? Should I really invest in this property just because? And I think that people are doing that right now. They go, real estate, I want to invest in real estate, and they go buy this property, and they don't think of, well, okay, I could probably invest in something else and make better return and have way less work, right? So make sure what you're investing in is going to actually make you money. That's really important. Okay, make sure it's going to make you some good money. The other thing I would say for investing is invest in areas where you think there's going to be appreciation. Okay, that's a lesson I've learned, and I haven't yet been burned on it because I've always bought right. But when you're investing in cheap areas, don't expect appreciation in those cheap areas. Okay, now it can happen. But if you think about it, like I bought properties in North Minneapolis, I bought properties in East St. Paul, and those are cheaper areas. They They are. Whether you think they're the greatest areas or the worst areas, it doesn't matter. They're inherently cheaper to buy properties, okay? My property values increased substantially from 2008, 2011, whenever I bought them, to today. However, if I would have bought a property in, let's call it Edina, okay, marketably more expensive properties, we know that. As long as I can cash flow in Edina, which is very tough, but as long as I can cash flow in Edina and hit my returns, you've got a greater possibility for massive appreciation in Edina, right? So think about the markets you're investing in and what that appreciation looks like, okay? Cash flow is number one, that's first. But potential appreciation, don't forget about that as well. Okay, so think about the markets you're investing in. Understand that properties in markets with tenants that have lower income have different difficulties than properties with higher income. Doesn't mean that the lower income properties are worse. It just means they've got different kind of difficulties, right? A-class properties in general, they're going to be more stable, right? You're going to get your rents, you're going to achieve probably what you projected. C-class properties are going to go up and down quite a bit more. Now, can you make more money with C-class properties? Potentially, if you manage it right, okay? And quite frankly, there's a big need for good landlords in the C-class property areas, especially right now when affordability is challenging for a lot of people. So, what kind of questions you guys have?
Historical cap rates, how did you find them out, or how did you calculate them?
Yeah, so that's challenging. It's very challenging to find historical cap rates. It's a lot of conversations with different brokers. It's a lot of conversations with different lenders, property managers, looking at previous reports, trying to get some of those reports from years past. I think the best thing as you're investing right now is to start tracking that stuff today, and that way you can start to really keep track of where cap rates are. So I try to keep a database of the markets that I'm in, where cap rates are every year and how they're trending. That way I've got an overall picture as I continue. But it's a lot of conversations with people. Some of it's a lot of it's opinion based. But overall, once you're doing that, you get a good understanding of at least close to where that market has been and typically is.
Who all is on your team that you use for finding this deal and setting it up and setting up the syndication?
So this deal in particular, I had a couple partners on. Most of my deals I haven't, but this deal in particular I did. So this deal was found by two of the partners. You guys might know Drew Whitson. He's a local guy. So he and another guy found this deal. He did some of the initial underwriting. I did a lot of the underwriting. We came to kind of conclusions on what we thought we could do. The due diligence was done by all of us. We did different parts of due diligence. One of the guys stayed back and he looked at all the leases. It's important to look at the leases to make sure they line up. So he stayed back, looked at a lot of the paperwork and leases while we walked the units with the property. The property manager walked the units. We walked, between all of us, we walked 100% of the units. Who else? Obviously, our lender, integral part of making sure things were lined up with the financing. Yeah. Does that answer it?
Mostly.
What else are you looking for?
Also, what were your biggest headaches when setting this up?
Probably the financing. Trying to get financing that aligned with what we wanted to achieve with the property. We thought we were going to get financing from a local bank. And I kind of was suspicious about that. The local bank kept on insuring us. When you're out of state trying to get financing from a local bank, it's pretty much a no. Okay? I would say like pretty much a no. And that's kind of what I continued to say to the partners, and we all pushed forward to see if we could, but it ended up being a no, just because we're not local. So that was probably the biggest challenge of the deal. For the most part, everything else went fairly smooth. Trying to think if there was anything else that was challenging. I mean, raising money is always stressful. I wouldn't call it, that part wasn't challenging necessarily, but it's always stressful. Like for me at least, we got to raise money for this deal, and you don't have, it's not like you have a year to do it. Like, you've got to raise that money. If you don't, you lose your earnest money, you lose your due diligence, whatever you spent on your inspectors and all that kind of stuff. So we would have been out, well over 6 figures if we would have not raised the money. So it's always a stressful time. And you get some investors that back out. We're lucky we didn't have very many, but that's probably the biggest stress in my opinion. Did I answer your question?
Did you end up having to go with a Minnesota bank or a national bank?
We went with a national player. Yeah.
Thank you.
When walking the units, what were you looking for? What you typically look for?
I mean, you're looking for things that are out of place, honestly. Like, you want to try to find. You walk into every unit assuming there's going to be like a monster that pops up, right? And so you're looking for those things. You're looking for mold. You're looking for just anything that is out of place, like whatever wiring that's randomly sticking out, or other safety hazards, or peeling paint. Environmental hazards are big that you're looking for. You're looking for signs too, that if the rent roll says this unit's occupied, you're looking for signs that show that it's truly occupied and not fake occupied. So, I like to open like cabinets. Are there dishes like in the cabinets? I like to pop open dishwashers. Are there dishes in dishwashers? Are there dishes in the sink? Is there food in the fridge? Like stuff like that. So you're just looking for, you're just trying to prove that the things are the way they're supposed to be.
How have you approached the upfront operating costs or operating reserves? Is that something that you'll normally try and roll into your loan upfront, or you just come up with the cash for those operating reserves to begin with? I mean, how have you done that? Various approaches in the past. Because I've heard both ways. Both that you just simply have to have those in cash going into a deal, or that you can actually source those from a lender as well as.
You could source them from the lender, I suppose. I raise them up front. So when I'm doing a capital raise, if you look at the number in the formula, that includes that reserve. So we raise additional funds and we put that reserve account, we put that into a reserve account, and it stays there. We don't touch it unless we truly have a reserve expense.
So it's not necessarily the general partner's own cash, but it is something that you raise as part of the equity portion of the deal.
Yep. And we get it up front because I don't want to be getting into any kind of trouble. We want to have that there. If we need to access it, we want to be able to access it. We hope not to access it. We hope to be able to give it all back. If at the end of the day we raised a $537,000 reserve account, and every single year we add an additional $56,000, and we only spend, let's say we spend only the $56,000 every year, at the end of the day, we're giving that $537,000 back to the investors. And that might come back prior to me even selling the building, or some of it, not all of it. But right now I raised quite a bit because we've got a big value add that we're doing to the property, right? But if we get to our numbers that we're happy with and the construction's all done and we feel warm and cozy inside, we might give a portion of that back now as a distribution, not even a distribution, as a payment back to the investors of their principal. And that won't decrease their shares, so that's just a kind of a bonus for them. I was looking for something. Can't remember. Oh, my loan amount. Now you can see, like I said, 6 months of principal and interest is a good reserve. So if you look at that, I'd only need about, what, 320, roughly 325, you know. So after it's stabilized, we will distribute some of that reserve back. Sure. Unless we need it, but hopefully we don't need it. Any other questions?
What was your scope of work on the renovations on this, and how did you estimate the construction costs?
Cool. Scope of work. So I put down everything we're gonna do. Okay. We're maybe gonna add a pool. I don't think we're going to right now because I don't think it'll increase the rents like we need to. So the cool thing is we got an extra $100,000 in our budget that we're likely not gonna spend on the pool. So we can potentially spend that out in other areas. We're actually looking at maybe doing a splash pad and seeing what that would do. So we're kind of surveying the market and seeing if we can do anything else and if we need to do anything else. But you can see we broke down all of that. Okay. Here's something else I did. I put some stress tests on this thing because I want to see what happens. So what happens if we have to exit at a 10 cap? If we have to exit at 10 cap, what does that do to my property? And you can see, I'll just scroll down to the very bottom here, you can see my investors, something must not be right there. You can see my investors are still making money. They're still making an 8.7% IRR. Okay? You can see here, what happens if we have a high vacancy rate? I put a vacancy rate of 20% overall. Okay, that means when I add all this together, it's 20%. What does that do? Okay. You can see here, my investors are still making money. Not very much. They're not going to be excited about that. But the most important part is that I preserve my investors' capital, right? If you give me $50,000, you want your $50,000 back at the end of the day, right? If I didn't give you $50,000 plus 4%, you're not going to be like, oh, thank you, that was an amazing investment. But you're not going to be probably super pissed at me because I didn't lose your money. I gave you your principal back plus a little bit, right? That's the goal. Well, the goal is to make more money, but I mean, number one is I need to preserve my investors' capital. They trust me with their money. This last one is stagnant rents. What happens if rents don't increase? Do I still make money? And the answer is yes. So in this case, to break even, I could even have rents quite a bit lower than what I thought, and they never make money. So I put some stress tests on it, and that helps show my investors, like, hey, you know, what happens if certain scenarios do happen. I also did a refinance scenario. What happens if we can refinance this? Now I make sure my investors know, like, don't count on this. Don't count on the refinance. But I have a lot of investors that have asked, what happens if we do refinance? And so I put that on there. And I tell people, look, if you're counting on this refinance as part of the deal, you know, don't invest. But you can see if we give some of the money back, we're keeping 1.8 left in the deal. So we're basically giving $1 million back. You can see where IRR jumps up to 24.7%. So I just give them a couple scenarios so they can kind of see what's going on, what are possibilities. You know, are you happy with doing this investment? I want all eyes to be open, right? I don't want to come in and have them not understand the whole deal start to finish. The other thing I do is I put together a business plan. I do have it here, but I put together a business plan that I want to show what's going on with the market. So I talked earlier about all of my market research that I want to do. I actually show that to my investors. So I want them to know why the market's actually good. So I give them my market research, I give them the charts and the data so they can see it. I give them the full scope of what we're doing to the property. I explain it to them so they can see it. I give them kind of the breakdown so they don't have to go through this and nerd out on it. I give them the simplified breakdown, like what we're making. Jordan? You done?
Yeah, any questions for Todd?
On your sheet there, do you have to hand calculate the years, or does it work off the table of the 2% increase you have up and up?
Yeah, it works out the table.
Okay.
Yeah. I try to, I'm not like an Excel wizard, so everything's not, but I think it's important, in my opinion, to at least develop your own underwriting. So I'm willing to give this to people who attended today, but at the same time, use it, but develop your own and change it and make sure it works for you. Because everybody's got a different process, everybody's got different strategies, and you want to make sure you've got something that works for you. Any other questions?
When you did your first syndication, how did you go about kind of explaining how you're qualified to do any of this? You know, I'm kind of imagining your first deal going, you know, like,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
What do you do?
A good question, a very good question, and I think it depends on where you're at. For me, I had done a ton of flips. I had a large portfolio of 1 to 4 families. I'd done some smaller apartments, 15, 20 unit apartments. So I had that experience of doing.
And you did all of those yourself, or
Yeah,
with
or some
1
of
or 2
them-
people?
Some of them I did with like a partner or two.
Okay.
But most of them it was myself. Yeah, myself or a partner. Right?
Yeah.
And so I had that experience already. So that was a fairly easy conversation with my investors, and most of the investors in my first deal that I did had invested with me in the past. They invested in one of my flips as a private lender. They invested in one of my rentals as a private lender. They maybe gave me a hard or private money loan for me to buy a rental cash and then turn it, and when I refinance, I would pay them back. So they'd already been around that, and so I'd already built those relationships, so they were ready to flip over. If you don't have that experience, it's a little more challenging. You need to somehow build your credibility. And that's where partnering with the right people, in my opinion, can really help a lot. Right? So partnering with people that have some experience, we can find those people, sourcing deals for people, helping bring some money into people's deals can be helpful. You know, where you can somehow associate yourself with somebody with experience, that can be really helpful. It's not required, but it can be really helpful. And you're quite frankly, your first set of investors are going to be people you know pretty well. Like it's not going to be somebody you just met 6 months ago and doesn't know you very well. They're going to be people that you probably have known for years and understand. People invest in you, right? They want to see a deal that works, but ultimately they invest in you. So that's really important. They want to make sure that your money's going to be safe with them, and you're not going to go travel to Tahiti and blow it all.
Fire festival or something like that?
Yeah.
So I noticed your rehab dollars are about 10 grand a door, roughly.
Roughly, yeah.
Would you consider that a heavy lift on that, or is that?
I would say this one's a a moderate lift, because if you looked at some of this stuff, we're putting about $5,000 in the interior, and we're putting about $5,000 in the exterior. So a lot of our lift is on the exterior. Some big ticket items. We're building, one of the biggest ticket items is we're building a clubhouse. The clubhouse got burnt down years ago, and nobody ever rebuilt it. And so we're gonna build a brand new clubhouse. So we've got a big budget set for that. That's over 10% of our budget right there.
Yeah.
So I would say it's not necessarily a big lift, because of exterior items are actually okay, because exterior items don't really affect your tenants in a negative way. You know, you don't have to kick them out of a unit. I shouldn't say kick them out. You never would hopefully kicking tenants out, but you don't have to ask a tenant to either be relocated to a new unit or not renew their lease. So it's a lot easier on the property in general to do exterior items. But the biggest bang for your buck is the interior items typically.
So I'm new to like this whole investor thing. I was wondering for a newbie, it was first suggested that I should be like a multi-family and I should do like 100 units, just because you'll be looking at an acquisition fee and you'll have investors. And then when I look into it, I'm like, oh my God, this is a lot of information at once. Then I look at the smaller places like that may cost like a couple $100,000. It's like, well, my return is gonna be a while before I can even expect
Yep.
to get out the hole. So what do you suggest?
That's the $1 million question, and it's different for everybody, right? And so you have to look at where you are, what your skill level is, where, you know, who the people around you are, all that kind of stuff, right? If you're surrounded by a lot of people that have money, you think it would be easy to raise money, well then going bigger, quicker is definitely not, it's gonna be easier, right? But if you're not surrounded by that, it's gonna be a lot of challenge to raise for a 100-unit building. And you're gonna have to raise for a 100-unit building, you're gonna have to raise possibly $3-5 million, maybe even more. So that can be very challenging on your first deal. Not many people can do that for their first deal, quite frankly. So there's a couple of options, in my opinion, to get started as a newbie. One is go for the multifamily, but partner with people, like I just said. Find people that you can align with. Maybe you've got an in with money, right? I said maybe you've got a lot of wealthy family, friends, people around you, okay? By your look, you might not. But maybe that's what you do, and maybe you have money yourself, right? And so you go, okay, well, I can help bring money to the table, and hopefully some other skills, right, to the table. I can bring some money, bring some skills, and I can help get into this deal. Now you gotta be careful of that, because there's regulations around it. And if you want that conversation, you and I can have that conversation on the regulations, and I'd also have you talk to an attorney too. But that's a way to do it. Maybe you're good at finding deals, right? So you can find a deal and get paid per deal. Jordan and I were talking before. There's a guy that we both know that found a deal, and he brought it to an investor, and they bought the deal, and he cut him in on the deal. Right? He found the deal. So, and again, there's regulations behind that. You can't just go do that. You want to make sure you set it up right, but to get paid for it. So there's that. Maybe you're really good at the underwriting stuff, this stuff here. So you could do a lot of underwriting and maybe get a cut on some of the deals. You volunteer. You do this for free. You don't expect to get paid, but in return, you ask, when you do find a deal that I'm underwriting, I just want some of the equity. I want to be part of the deal. And you're not going to get 30% of the deal, but you might get a small share of it. So stuff like that really can kind of help you get started. The other way is, of course, to buy the single-family home, the duplex, the triplex, all that kind of stuff. And I think the best strategy for that is that the strategy where you're buying it a little bit distressed, you're doing some work to it, you create some equity, and you can refinance and pull either all or most of your capital out of it, and just keep on rolling that over, right? That's how I built my whole portfolio. It's,
You started with single family?
I started with 1 to 4 family properties. So that's a good strategy. Buying smaller properties, 4plexes, 8 units, 10 units, with some partners, or if you have a ton of money with your money, or if you have a couple of people that want to invest with you.
Have you ever purchased like a fire damaged home?
Oh,
For the person-
fire damaged?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, those are
How
a
would
lot
that
of,
work out for you? Because I heard that's a good option.
it's a good option. You have to know what you're doing.
Okay.
You have to understand the structure and the structural damage that could have taken place. You have to also understand how to actually get rid of that fire smell, which is very difficult. So you have to know what you're doing, or hire a true contractor that knows what they're doing.
And those are expensive too.
And those are
Fire-related
expensive.
people.
Yeah. So the other option is potentially just scrape it, knock it all down, and build something new. But you have to know what you're doing on fire damage, and mold too. I bought a lot of mold houses. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to get rid of the mold, and you have to know how to create an environment where the mold won't come back by flooding or however it initially happened. So you have to know the source of the mold. Where did it come from? Why is it in the building? And how do I make sure it's not going to come back after I renovate the place? Because the last thing you want to do is buy this place, fix the mold problem, move a tenant in, and the mold starts coming back, and now your tenant gets sick and sues you. That doesn't sound fun. So you want to make sure that mold stays away, so you have to understand that. So highly distressed properties are very lucrative, but they're also very, I would say, risky if you don't know what you're doing. And I don't mean to scare you, because they are very profitable, or potentially profitable, but there's just a lot of risk involved. And you have to understand what you're doing.
I don't think getting started with any, maybe you get a smaller property. One of my favorite strategies is getting started with a live-in duplex to 4plex.
Yeah, live-ins are great.
And you do minor rehabilitation to it, which is kind of where I got started, and then you live in it for a few years, you move out, you sell it, you move into something bigger. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Most successful syndicators I know, like Todd, started doing smaller projects and they moved up. I'd say 9 out of the 10 of the guys that I know that are successful in doing this on a larger scale didn't just start there. I do know some people that started with something small and then immediately jumped into something bigger, but most of them kind of jumped their way up. So they did a single family, then a duplex, and a 4plex, and a 10 unit, then it's just gone up. And maybe that took 3 to 5 years, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
That's the thing with real estate. I mean, a lot of people think it's a get-rich-quick deal, and real estate is not. You've got to be patient in this industry. I mean, it took me years to build up something substantial. It wasn't overnight. So if you can buy one property, if you're new and you can get one property within the next year, even if it's a duplex, congratulations, because you're on your way to getting to where you want to be. Right?
Did you guys perform your own maintenance for like the smaller
When
properties?
I first started, I did. But very quickly, I transitioned out of that and had other people do it. It's very hard to scale if you're doing everything yourself. Very hard to scale.
I didn't, because I used to do the mold
If you suck at
fire
it, don't do it.
remediation, and I kind of sucked. I liked tearing things down, and so I could do mold and fire remediation, but I didn't do any of the fixes myself. I found cheap handymen and had them do it. So I'm not I can figure out most anything. I don't like to do it, and I knew that by doing it, I was wasting all my time doing that stuff when I could have been doing other stuff, like finding new deals, or for my business, finding new clients, really just doing higher dollar things. So if it's a good use of your time, great. You know, I know people that are great at it, save a ton of money, and I just met with the guy, that's what he does for his day job. So he does maintenance as a maintenance technician for his day job. So doing that on the side isn't a big deal. He's proficient, he can get it done. But for me, I'm a realtor. I can figure this stuff out, it's not the best use of my time. So
You gotta look at the dollar per hour too, right? So on your day job or how much are you worth, how much does it cost to hire somebody to do it, and how long would it take you if you did it yourself, right? So if it costs $25 an hour to hire somebody, in your day job you make even $25 an hour, it's probably better to hire somebody else out, because it's gonna take you 4 hours to do the same job that they can do in 1 or 2. And they're gonna do likely a better job than you. The other thing you gotta think about, even with the maintenance guy that George just mentioned, how quickly can you get it done? You're losing income every day you don't have that project done. You're losing income. I got tenants that pay me to live at my place. If I don't have a tenant living there, guess what? I'm losing money. The higher the rent, the more money I'm losing. So it adds up quickly. All of a sudden that unit is 1 month late, then 2 months late, then 3 months late, and all of a sudden you just lost $4,000. And yeah, you saved some money because you did it yourself, but you saved $2,500. That doesn't make much sense, right? And not only are you losing that income, guess what? You've got expenses too. You gotta pay the mortgage, you gotta pay the heat or the electric or whatever, water bills, all that kind of stuff. Taxes, insurance, those things don't go away. The insurance actually could go away if the building's not occupied. So your insurance companies don't like vacant buildings. So it's different types of insurance, especially if your building's vacant for a long time, and they can actually, depending on the type of insurance you have, if you have a building that's vacant for an extended period of time, they can deny your claim if an insurance claim happens during that time because you violated their policy terms. So you gotta make sure you're aware of that as well. We always did, when I was buying single families and duplexes and stuff like that, I was buying them very distressed, typically unoccupied. And so we were doing renovations for 2 to 6 months. We always placed a different type of insurance on it until we got it rented.
So guys, what we've been doing here is we're really trying to make this into more of a mastermind style type meetup. So we've been doing some goal setting. My last goal, the last time we met, was to analyze roughly 5 deals a week. I've been doing that. So my new goal that I kind of set for myself a few weeks ago was to make at least 1 offer per week. So you don't find deals unless you analyze them. Well, you don't find deals unless you're looking. You don't find them unless you're analyzing them. You don't get deals done unless you're making offers. So my current goal is to make at least an offer a week. I've been doing that, and going back and forth with some of them, and some of them have gone away, but making an offer a week on a property.
For myself, it would be just, keep myself educated until I'm good and comfortable, find the right property instead of just jumping ship or just jumping in on something I'm not completely sure. Because the last thing I want to do is, shoot myself on the foot and then get completely discouraged and then just dump it. So, like I said, for me, it's just within 6 months at the earliest, find possibly a duplex and move in and rent the other side and just keep at it.
There you go.
Oh, still learning, so it'll be a while before I could make offers on big projects.
Sure, any goal's fine too. You just want to keep learning it.
Yeah.
Until you get it.
By the way, I think it's important if you're new to not jump in super quick without understanding what you're doing yet. You still have to take action, and action can be, eventually you're gonna have to buy something, but action can be you're learning, you're coming to the meetings, you're doing things like that. That's action. Again, eventually you have to buy something, but start looking at properties, start doing that. I started looking and really getting into real estate in 2007, and I didn't buy my first property until midway through 2008. And I started probably looking in mid-2007. So I took almost an entire year to learn, look at properties. I probably I remember driving for properties, or drive around neighborhoods looking for properties, right? Homeowners, all kinds of stuff. But that's taking action. Eventually, again, you have to buy, but don't feel discouraged if you don't buy something right away. I think that's rare for people to buy things within the first, once they go, hey, I'm gonna do this real estate thing. It's rare to buy something right away, and it's probably even more rare if you do buy something right away to actually have success doing it.
Yeah, so I work as a real estate agent. I preface everything with this is gonna take 3 to 6 months and 2 to 5 offers if you're underwriting deals and look. So let's say you're trying to buy a duplex, you need to look at a certain number of duplexes, you need to underwrite a certain number of duplexes, you need to make offers. It's gonna take a while to do that. And if you're buying them based on numbers and not just based on how pretty the kitchen looks, even if you're buying it based on how pretty the kitchen looks, it's gonna take some time. So it's 3 to 6 months typically to buy your first duplex if that's what you're trying to do.
My goal is to continue coming around to meetups, learning more, and continue to network and meet interesting people.
Then so I'm closing on a deal next Friday, so my goal is to get that rehab as quick as possible to increase the cash flow.
Yeah, come to more meetings. Just network, so be nice.
My goal is to go to more meetings, events, and to start analyzing more properties, apartment properties.
I know of an event you can go to in September.
My goal is to analyze some more properties and purchase either a flip property or another duplex by the end of the year.
And so your goal was to go to a certain number of meetups.
Yeah, that's still one too.
Yeah,
I think one
I've
of
seen
them
you
was
quite
my
a bit, so
goal.
I know you've been hitting it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I'm kind of a little bit, I've already started analyzing anywhere from 3 to 4 deals a month. I'm trying to get that a little bit higher up, but the appraisal business has been really busy, so it's good in the other way. So I'm trying to get that. I'm also trying to get my wife to get a little bit more on board. It's a partnership in that regard. So she wants to do more flipping, I want to do more holds, so we're trying to find that middle ground. So, but yeah, going more meetups is a big key as well. We're both trying to do that a little bit more. Now that our schedule's freed up over the summer, so.
So why don't you flip one property,
Yeah.
keep the profit, and buy a rental?
Well, and that's kind of the key. That's how we got the first one. But she's a little bit. I've been in the appraisal industry for over 22 years, so I see a lot of the market change and a lot of things going on. She's more like the person that watches DIY TV shows and it looks so gravy, and she wants to do a lot of the work herself. And I'm trying to realize the same thing. It's not cost effective for us to be doing the work. We can make a lot more money in our own day jobs, and we can doing this. And I try to, cause that's why we're doing more of the meetups, so she can convince her that this is not like the TV show where you're going to look.
Yeah.
It's not gonna look great, or you want to do all the work because we have a kid and we got other projects, and it's gonna take us way longer to do it ourselves than it would be to hire somebody out. So.
You got a record button on that thing? Seriously, you got
Yeah.
a record button on that thing? Record this,
Okay.
and then you send it to your wife, or show it to your wife. I've,
Yeah. I'll just do this. Am I gonna get in trouble though?
you
never know. Okay.
This is coming from a guy who has watched other people flip a lot of properties and who's flipped 150-ish properties himself. Flipping is all about velocity. So the faster you do it, the better chance you're gonna make money. So if you're doing it yourself, it's gonna take a long time to get it all the way to the finish line. And flipping is about velocity. Markets can change and shift fairly quickly. You're predicting what that future sale value is. People got in trouble in 2007 and 8 because the market started going down, and it was about velocity. If they would have got that rehab done in 1 month or 2 months, or even 3 months versus 6, 8, 10 months, they would have been able to sell it and make a little, maybe not quite as much money as they wanted because the market was going down, but they wouldn't have lost it. I bought one property, actually one of my first properties I bought. There was how to flip a house books in the attic. They went to a weekend course and bought this weekend course. And I guarantee you, and I know by the craftsmanship, they were doing the work themselves and they lost the property. Because it's all about velocity. It's all about getting that project done, cutting your losses as quickly as possible. Look, you put that house on the market and it doesn't sell quickly, you need to drop the price because it's all about velocity. Instead of making $30,000, cut it down and make 20. It doesn't matter. Do the next one and go fast. So that's key of getting a flip done successfully. It's all about getting it done.
And we're also, speaking of couples in real estate, we're gonna do a couples in real estate meetup here in August, so make sure to watch for that. There'll be a bunch of couples that are in real estate, some that are active and some that want the spouse to be active, so it'll be a good meetup.
Yeah, I'm here to learn, here to meet the people, and maybe in the next 6 months do a deal.
I'd like to continue to learn and start doing more of the analyzing of the properties.
There you go.
My goal is to do one broker touch a week, whether it's a broker I've already spoken to and continue the relationship, or whether it's a new broker. I look at 5 deals, analyze typically one of those because the rest of them aren't worth analyzing, and I want to deal by September. Is what I'm looking for. So.
My goal is to learn more, start putting in some offers. Hopefully, get a property within the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I aim to bring home the property I'm working on now, and of course, to time block every single day to look for other opportunities. So,
The goal I set last time I was here was to identify a mentor. I found a mentor and we've consolidated, and now we're working on a lead generation business. And in that business, the goal that I have set, that we have set for the next 6 months, is to close our first 3 leads.
Let's see, goal I said last time was to get the details on what my LLC is gonna look like for upcoming purchases. That has been taken care of, and next goal is gonna be properly executing a sale for my existing property and being able to apply those proceeds to next purchases.
My goal is to analyze some apartment deals and come up with a strategy for the first apartment deal.
My goal is to continue to build my investor database and to complete my mission, vision, values for new business.
I'm currently raising money for 2 projects, and I want to raise $200,000 in the next week for one and $65,000 for the other.
My goal is just to learn more, to network, because I'm learning about wholesaling, because I don't want to go too much into everything, just to get one deal under contract this, the rest of this year. Also, that's it.
So we're also doing go ahead, Todd.
My goal is to put a 100+ unit apartment under contract by the end of the quarter. And my goal, I also am starting a mastermind group. So my goal is to get that started. It's a paid mastermind for people who want to accelerate their business. So my goal is to I'm going to do small groups. So the goal is to get that first group going. And last goal is to sell out the conference.
Sell what?
Sell out the conference.
How many more spots you got?
We got quite a few spots available. So, yeah, we want to sell 250 tickets. So we got plenty of room for everybody.
So we're also doing the halves and ones here at the end. So just if you have something you're looking to sell, throw that out there. Or if you have something that you want to buy, definitely throw that out there too. So I have 3 duplexes that I'll be listing here in the remainder of the month. So one next week, one the week after that, and one probably the week after that. I'm determined on some of that. But within July, I'll be listing 3 more duplexes. just say, I want to sell those. So if you know anybody looking for a duplex in Northeast, South Minneapolis, or Selby area of St. Paul, send them my way.
Actually, I do know someone for the Selby I sent to today.
Oh, perfect.
He's a coworker.
Awesome. Well, I will sell it to him. So,
What are we doing again?
halves in once.
You don't have to go if you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything.
I'm good, then I'll pass.
Okay.
I don't have anything yet, so I'll pass it.
I'd say just raise your hand if you got one, shout it out.
Yeah.
I want to find some syndications, so maybe we can talk to you later.
Sorry, I was
For you as well.
trying to check on windows for a property that Jordan's. Sorry. You said that, I was like, I'm gonna check it.
Oh, perfect.
I want to help anyone that's working on a business to help them build a website. Something I do.
Anybody else?
Well, what is your phone number? It might be having someone for it, but.
Oh, 502-855-1379.
Where is the duplex? Where are the duplex in South Minneapolis?
South Minneapolis, so it's 45th and Lindale, so pretty far south. Well, not really far south, but on the southern edge of uptown, real close to Lake Harriet.
How much are you gonna be listed?
That one's gonna be listed for $430,000. The duplex over on Selby will be $325,000. The Northeast one will be $399,000. All in the 300 to 400 range, or right around 400.
Any of them hit the 1% rule?
Close. All of them are real close.
Any of them have a possibility of exceeding the 1% rule?
Yeah, so 2 of them do have a possibility of, if you're gonna go after the 2040 plan and add units or bedrooms in the basements, then yeah, there's certainly a plan for that. Both of them are real easy to do that. Well, not easy, but it's possible. So it'd be great live-in house hacks for anybody looking to live in a duplex. All great areas, all in pretty good shape. So good for somebody looking to live in it. Anybody else have anything?
Does have a Chevy, want a Ferrari count?
Yeah. If you want a Ferrari and somebody's selling a Ferrari, give it to them. All right, thanks for coming, guys. So we meet here probably every other week. The next one we'll be doing is in 2 weeks. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but how to buy small apartments. So, Todd was talking about how to underwrite an apartment deal, and that applies to any size. We're going to talk more about how to buy the 5 to 20 range apartment buildings. So, good if you're moving up some duplexes or something.
Just a quick question, earlier Todd was talking about giving away the
Excel sheet.
Yeah.
Do you have my contact? I got cards too, so if you want a card, that's fine.
Oh, yeah, here you go.
But my contact's there too, if you want to write it down. You don't want a card?
I'd offer to, if you send it to me, anyone that wants it here, I can distribute that if that's something, it'll take some work off of your shoulders. So like you can just tell me, give me your email, I'll contact you.
Here you go.
You can have a card.
You can trust me, I'll give it to you guys.
Thank you. See, I think
I'll take one of those, Todd.
I'm assuming most people found us through Meetup. We're on Meetup, we're on Bigger Pockets, we're on Facebook too. A lot of these are most of these are live streamed, and that's on the Moorhead team. So if you want to go back and watch old videos, they're out there, and they'll be out there pretty much forever. So come out to our next meetups, stay around, talk after. We're not going anywhere right away, but just stay around. And if you have anything you want to learn about, message me on Meetup, and I'll see what I can figure out. So. Thanks, guys, really appreciate you coming. Finish on that.
Spread the word on this meeting.
Spread the word on the